How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Sector 6, and today we have got a little bit more Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth news. Yes, we do. Over the last 24 hours, it seems like there's been a series of interviews done by Nomura and by Kitase. So we're going to look at the translations of some of the questions that were asked, some of the answers that were given, and we're going to see what we can learn. Some of it is pretty damn interesting. Don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe for future content, because we're going to be hitting all of this news as it comes out, and it looks like we're ramping up for a pretty busy 12 months. Like, the news seems like it's going to keep coming thick and fast. So don't miss out. But let's get on with it. Now, the order of these questions isn't going to be exactly as it is in the interviews. I'm taking them from translations over on Audrey's page. The order's a little bit messed up, so I don't know if this is exactly the correct order, but we're going to go through all of them, we're going to hit them all, and we're going to talk about each of them. So the first question that we've got here is, will Crisis Core FF7 Reunion have a different ending? And Nomura says there will be no changes to the events of the story. The original is consistent with both FF7 and FF7R, so there are no worries here. And Nomura goes on to say that what I can say is that the Buster Sword design was changed so that it's consistent. When the original game was released, it was close to the FF7 Advent Children release, so that's why the design took on the one from Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. As such, Crisis Core FF7 Reunion's Buster Sword is designed with the original Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VII Remake in mind. Now, the interviewer then asks about the word reunion being added to the title, and that it's an important keyword within Final Fantasy VII. It seems like that would be used as the next part of the remake trilogy after Rebirth, so why have they used it now? Which is something that I've been saying for a while. Reunion seems very likely for a title in the trilogy, but it seems not. And Nomura says there are a few different reasons as to why we chose that word. At first we were stuck on whether we should simply call it remaster, but in the end we decided on that word to align with the remake trilogy, with the words remake, rebirth. The word reunion means reuniting, seeing each other again, and instead of meaning like being reborn, we thought that something along the lines of growing up and coming back would fit with the title. Chronologically, the story is a prequel to FF7, but I also made sure that it will reunite and also connect with FF7R. Which is, so, it's a very interesting question. This is something that I kind of said on stream last night. It's very much a, oh, we're going to do this, but we might do this in the interview. So he says in one of the answers to the question that the story is consistent to the original. You know, it's not going to be changed. There are no changes to the events of the story. But then down here, they're saying that they're making sure that it connects with the original FF7, but also with FF7 Remake. I've still got a gut feeling there's going to be something post-creditor. Like, I mean, I don't know. They've told us many things, and they've lied about many things. So, who knows at this point? But based on what Nomura is saying, Crisis Core Reunion is going to be a faithful retelling of the original Crisis Core. Now, the next translation that we've got from Audrey, it seems to come from the 4Gamer interview. And the question is, with the announcement of FF7 Rebirth, I think the part that's most intriguing to fans is Zack. Will FF7 Rebirth's story change greatly compared to the original game? And Nomura says the story's axis, I've seen other translations that say crux, so the story's crux, like the core of the story, will not change. Regarding this new mystery that is different from the original game, I'm sure that those who played the original will enjoy a fresh experience while playing Rebirth. On that note, there will be some changes regarding the progression of the game. For example, when playing the game you might think, wait, did that location get cut out? However, that's because the composition of the trilogy might be why certain places are not visited. There will be changes as to the order of when you head to certain locations, but in general, we do not plan to delete any locations. So, it's telling yet again that they've been asked, is the story going to change? And they've not answered that question. They've answered, oh, none of the locations are going to be changed, you just might go to them in a different order. One thing that stuck out in my mind now is that they seem to be viewing the story as staying the same as us visiting the same locations, or at least in interviews that seems, when they get asked, is the story going to stay the same? Oh no, don't worry, you'll go everywhere, you'll see all the places. That's what they're saying. They're not saying the story is going to be identical. They've not said that. They might say it later in the interview, we'll see, but they've not said it yet. They have not flat out said, no, we are not changing the story of Final Fantasy VII. Interesting, Nomura. Interesting. And then the next question is, we're excited to see how the game has been changed and want to play it as soon as possible. Do you have any messages to the fans regarding the development of the FF7R project? So Saito responds, for those who played Crisis Core on the PSP and would like to relive the story, and for those who've never played it before, we've made a lot of improvements so that everyone can enjoy the game. Our team is doing our best to deliver this game, so please wait until the game can be released. If you can play the game till the end, it will add to your enjoyment of not only the original FF7, but also FF7 Remake and Rebirth as well. Please look forward to it. That could just be nothing. I mean, it's true. If you know the deal with Zack and the events that go down in Crisis Core, you're probably going to understand and enjoy this project going forwards a lot more. So that makes sense. That makes sense. Kitase, I would like everyone to play FF7 Reunion Crisis Core, which has Zack's entire story, in order to fully understand who exactly is the character, Zack, who appears in FF7 Remake. Within the Crisis Core story, you will get a better understanding of how exactly it will be connected to Rebirth, so please check it out. Right. So this is what I mean. They've just said a few minutes ago nothing's going to change, but now they're talking about how it's exactly going to connect to Rebirth. So I think there's going to be something at the end of the game. I think that way, the story doesn't change. The game stays the same. But then after the game, in a post-credit scene or something like that, things are going to happen. That's what it's feeling like to me. And then Nomura comes in. There are many who have played FF7 Remake or played the Crisis Core event in The First Soldier and wondered, who is Zack? By playing Crisis Core, players will understand why exactly those who do know him are so fond of him and why he's so special to the story. Zack will also be in FF7 Ever Crisis, obviously. When you hear the word FF7, you will probably think of either Cloud or Sephiroth. But Zack is equally as important, and I hope that many people will come to realise that as well.
Right.
So I'm not sure about that. So I've never really viewed Zack as important as Cloud and Sephiroth. Cloud and Sephiroth are the main two. So if we're throwing Zack into that mix as well, they're definitely going to be doing a lot of stuff with Zack in Rebirth. Like, they're giving me the vibe that Zack's going to be major in Rebirth. That's the vibe that this interview is giving me. Zack's going to have a pretty substantial part to play in the plot going forwards. Which then brings me back to, how are you not changing the story if Zack's going to be involved, because Zack's dead in the original game? Do you see what I mean? Things contradict what they say a lot. They contradict themselves so much. Now, continuing on, and I think the order of these has got messed up a bit, like I say, I do apologise for that. I'm trying to keep them in a reasonable order, but it's not happening. So, 4Gamer asked about Crisis Core and the original Crisis Core being a prequel, and Kitase talks about, you know, Zack makes much more appearances than in the original game, in Remake, and because of that, we want people who played FF7 Remake to have a deep dive into exactly who Zack is. That's why a Crisis Core remaster makes sense. And the next question, since Crisis Core will be releasing and is apparently supposed to connect with Remake, does that mean the story will change? Yeah, right, so this is very similar to the previous question in the first image that we looked at. The story will be reproduced with respect to the original material. We're not changing the story as a result of the influence from Remake. The parts that will be similar to Remake are related to assets and battle elements, and talking about the Buster Sword and how they tweak the design and things like that. So yeah, that makes sense. And then the interviewer says that he thought that they were going to throw some kind of surprise in. And Nomura says, regarding why we will leave it unchanged, if we are to change it, then the differences we have shown with the Remake project compared to the original will be for nothing. For the FF7 Remake project, if you are to play it through to the end, you will see a mystery unravel before you. We do not plan to change the past, and on that same note, we do not want to modify or add anything to Crisis Core because history has not been changed. Right. Okay. So that's pretty much confirmation that the point where everything changes and gives birth to the Remake project is somewhere between the end of Crisis Core and the start of Remake. Or within Remake. It's somewhere in that pocket. My personal belief for quite a while has been that that black feather that kind of floats down to the ground in the reactor at the start of Remake, that's Sephiroth kind of entering stage. Do you know what I mean? That's Sephiroth appearing. That could be the first change. But it is pretty much confirmed now that nothing in the past has been changed. So the earliest that the change could come in would be the end of Zack's final battle. And it remains to be seen, because the way that we'd imagine it is that Crisis Core happens, Zack's story plays out, the end of Crisis Core happens, we all know what happens at the end of Crisis Core. I'm going to try and be less spoilery for the people who don't know, but, you know, if you know, you know. And then one of two things happens. You get the Final Fantasy VII timeline where things pan out as they did in the original game, and then you've got... See, this is why I think there's got to be time travel or some kind of... There's some sort of fuckery going on, because the way it would work is you'd get Crisis Core, then you'd get Final Fantasy VII, then you'd obviously get the rest of the compilation and continue through. You'd get to whatever point it is that it seems like Sephiroth is doing his thing and has come back. Then he comes back, and what does he affect? Like, have we got a double broken timeline here? Is that what's going on? Because if you think about it, if Sephiroth comes back and Sephiroth just drops in the reactor scene, messes with Cloud, Remake proceeds how it does, the party rally against Destiny, beat the Whisper Harbinger, and then another break happens because of the Singularity, another change in the Crisis Core timeline, which then branches off into what? Because that can't branch off into Remake, because Remake created it, unless we're in a paradox situation here. Unless we've got some sort of paradox going on. That's the only thing that I can think of where Sephiroth comes back because of a change in the Crisis Core timeline, but the change in the Crisis Core timeline isn't triggered until Sephiroth's come back and the Remake has happened, and then the Singularity explodes. Some sort of paradox like that. It's very confusing. Very confusing. But yeah, I might cut this bit, we'll see. But anyway, back to the interview. So the interviewer then says, so what you're saying is that even though the FF7R project is portrayed differently than the original, what happens up until that point remains the same? And Nomura says, yes, exactly. It might give you a sense of uneasiness or foster doubt, so you might ask, why is Zack heading to Midgar with Cloud in Rebirth's trailer? Well, the answers will unfold as you play Rebirth. Seriously, man, my brain. I mean, could it be that we're going to be playing two timelines separately? Is that what it's going to be? Because in that trailer, you technically see two timelines. You see Sephiroth and Cloud walking, and that's been confirmed as the flashback. We'll get to that interview section in a bit. But Nomura has said that that is the flashback. It's not a new scene. Not sure if I believe him, but he said it, so we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But then you also see Cloud and Zack, which is the post-Crisis Core timeline that didn't happen. Or did it? It's completely bewildering to me. Because you got to think about it like this. If let's say, the paradox thing I suggested earlier turns out to be correct, so Sephiroth coming back and the event at the end of Crisis Core Reunion are kind of intrinsically linked and need each other to cause the other to happen and therefore creates a paradox. If that's the case, Zack would have gone and spoken to someone. Do you know what I mean? He'd have gone and spoken to Aerith, surely. Cloud would remember him. Someone would have seen him. Cloud wouldn't have a Buster Sword. And I know that there's all these theories that Zack goes back to Midgar and gets a new sword made for him. No, that's just awful. I don't even want to think about that. Why would he go back to Shinra and get a new sword made? Why would he do that? They've just tried to kill him. Why would it? They've just tested on him for no. So if it is that paradoxical kind of situation where you've got this one timeline that's been broken twice, we would have seen the ramifications of it. We wouldn't have seen Cloud with a Buster Sword. Aerith would probably have seen Zack at some point. The fact that we're seeing both of these things happening side by side in a trailer, it just makes me think that there's got to be a division. There has to be a division. We are probably dealing, in my thoughts at least, with two separate timelines, existences, realities. I'm not sure what kind of form it's going to take because we need to know. We need to see it realistically. It's pure guesswork until then. But the fact that we're seeing both of them things existing at the same time, in the same trailer, yeah, it reinforces to me that we're probably seeing some kind of split in reality or timeline or something like that. Yeah, I'm confused. It's very confusing. We need more. We need another trailer, which we'll get to shortly because they do mention something about a surprise coming soon in one of the translations. I'm certain of it. So we'll get to that. This is going to be a long fucking video, by the way. And as you can see, it's not just me that's a little bit baffled by all of this. Audrey's feeling it too. So Crisis Core is not changing because history hasn't changed, but then Zack is still alive in Rebirth. But Crisis Core connects to Remake. Am I the only one? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This is what I mean. They're setting up a paradox here. That's what it feels like to me. This is going to hurt a lot of people. Because a lot of people are going to hate that. A lot of people hate time travel-y, alternate reality stuff. They just don't even give it a chance. They just hate it. So this could be a problem, but we'll see. I'm up for it. Now, next up, we've got the interview with Famitsu. It looks like the boys have done a bit of a round of interviews here, and they've gone around, talked to a few people, got as much information as they can safely, without spoiling everything about Final Fantasy VII and Remake and Reunion going forwards. So, let's jump into it. So the first question, do you plan on making other remakes from the compilation? For example, Dirge of Cerberus. Vice and Nero's voices were in Crisis Core FF7, and they also appeared in FF7 Remake Intergrade. Will they make another appearance? And Nomura says, our staff really want to do a Dirge of Cerberus remaster, as well as Before Crisis, but after taking into consideration the costs of doing so, we do not have plans at this time. At this time is interesting. We wanted them to show up in Intergrade because we wanted all of the FF7 titles to be connected with a common world. They also appeared as very formidable bosses, so that's why we decided on that. Okay. Let's chill for a second. Before Crisis, I doubt we'll get a remake of that, ever. Before Crisis was a mobile game that came out in chapters. It's being remade as part of Ever Crisis, which is a mobile game that's going to come out in chapters. Like, everyone who says that Ever Crisis is remaking the compilation, you're wrong. Except for in one single case. And that one single case is Before Crisis, because it's being remade in pretty much the exact same format it was originally made in. So, yeah, I'll give Ever Crisis a pass on Before Crisis. I'll count that. So I don't think we'll ever see that remade. Dirge of Cerberus, though, like, if they're doing Crisis Core, why not? Unless they're trying to say that the importance of the characters in Dirge of Cerberus is going to be a diminished importance, but I don't know about that because, we all know what Sephiroth's plan is long term. Gather up all the energy of the planet, become a god. That's basically the thing that he's been going for the whole time. And we all know that Omega is a massive part of that. And Omega is like pretty much the core of the story in Dirge of Cerberus. So if Sephiroth's plan is aligned with Omega's function, and you get all that from Dirge of Cerberus, I kind of feel like we could see a Dirge of Cerberus remaster. I think that's possible, but wild speculation. And if we do, it's not going to come until in between Rebirth and whatever the third game is. That's when we're going to see it. So Rebirth seems to be all about the Zack mystery. That's what this is starting to look like. Rebirth is all about like what is going on with Zack. It then remains to be seen what the third game is going to be all about. But let's keep going. We got a little bit of chat about Ever Crisis, about seeing the younger Sephiroth with shorter hair. Nomura confirms that yes, that is Sephiroth, and there will be an episode regarding First Soldier as well in Ever Crisis, I assume. Yeah, that must be it. So, confirmation that that's Sephiroth, but I think everybody knew that was Sephiroth. Let's move on to Rebirth now. We see Cloud and Sephiroth walking together, and that's a scene from Cloud's flashback, right? Yes, that is correct. Due to some rules regarding what info we can show, the UI has a portion of it that's turned off. This made some people think that it's a new scene, but I just wanted to clear this up. It wasn't the UI that made me think it was a new scene, it was a gut feeling. I didn't even think it was a new scene, just had a gut feeling it could be a new scene. And that's still there. These guys lie to us a lot. So, I'm not 100% that isn't a future scene, but they've said it isn't, so again, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But in my gut and in my brain, I'm still thinking, Now, in the original, Sephiroth joins your party and fights with you in the flashback. Will that happen again? And Nomura responds, please wait for more information regarding that, which is a weird answer, because it should just be a very simple, yes, Sephiroth will be working alongside you in the flashback, if the flashback remains the same. Now, I've been saying for a while that Sephiroth's going to mess with Cloud, get into his head. This manipulation that Sephiroth's been doing throughout Remake is going to continue in Rebirth, and it's going to be quite heavy during the flashback, I think, because he's trying to destabilize Cloud. That seems to be one of his overarching goals. to break Cloud as early as he can. And messing with Cloud while he's retelling the flashback, that's a pretty good chance to do it. So yeah, the fact that they've not just gone, yes, you will control Sephiroth in the flashback, just like in the OG, that tells me that there's going to be some stuff going on. So we'll keep an eye on that. And when the interviewer carries on that in the scene, you can see that the distance to the destination is quite far. It seems like the maps are huge. Again, Nomura can't talk about it, but it is very vast. So it's kind of making me think we're not going to get open world, but we're going to get big zones. I don't think anyone's going to be disappointed particularly with the amount of space there is to run around in. That's not a concern of mine. I think we're going to be fine. Because if you think about it, the OG was pretty linear anyway. There was a couple of little optional places you could go to, but predominantly you were funneled through the story from location to location. I can't see Rebirth being any different. And then the interviewer asks, with such a vast world that opens up for you, anyone would be excited to start on their journey. In the trailer, we also see Zack carrying Cloud on his shoulders as they make their way back to Midgar, and Nomura says yes, we hope that Rebirth will give you that feeling of opening up to the journey. Zack is a key character in this game, so please look forward to it. Again, this is just further hinting to me that Zack's going to be a big chunk of Rebirth, and it seems like the focus of Rebirth is what has happened with Zack, or at least the sub-focus. Like, the primary focus is always going to be chasing Sephiroth, stopping Sephiroth. That's going to be the focus, but it seems like the little sub-thread that's going to keep on going all the way through the game is just going to be Zack, and I don't know if it's going to be a case of we control him or what. One of my oldest beliefs on this is that we'll get kind of like Laguna scenes from Final Fantasy VIII where you kind of flash back into a dream. I still think that's pretty possible, but with them saying how important and how key he's going to be going forwards, who knows, maybe he's there. It remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. But they're definitely fueling the fire. There's a lot of videos going to come out of these theories, out of these questions. There's things brewing in my mind right now. And I'm sure every other content creator for Final Fantasy VII is exactly the same way. So brace yourselves. The interviewer then asks, I'm sure there are different possibilities regarding that scene, and really makes you theorise. Well, since you mentioned there will be 3 parts, where exactly will Rebirth cover? So he's asking how much of the original game is Rebirth going to cover? And Nomura says, we have not announced until recently how many parts the story will be, as we actually were considering whether to do it in 2 or 3 parts. That is wild. Seriously, if there's nothing that confirms the fact that this story is going to change dramatically to you yet, this should be it. They thought they could get this story done in 2 parts. There is no way that you can fit the rest of Final Fantasy VII, scaled up to the size that Midgar was, in 1 more game. There's no way. It's impossible. So, one of 2 things happens. 1, nothing is scaled up to the size of Midgar and everything's just kind of half-assed and not really fleshed out. Can't see that happening. What's the point if they're going to do that? Or the other possibility, which is they've changed the story so dramatically, because it's not a remake, it's a new story, that they actually could have got it done in 2 games, but they've decided, no, we'll do it in 3, we'll flesh things out a bit more, we'll add some extra stuff and we'll get it to a 3rd game. That's what that feels like to me, that response. And the interviewer themselves, like, only 2 parts? Since FF7 Remake only covered Midgar, it left us with the impression there might be 3 or even 4 parts. And Nomura says we started planning with 3 parts in mind, but there was a time when Kitase said that we actually divide it into 2 parts. And Kitase goes on, it was one of the ideas I had among the many different ideas we were throwing around. When we were planning FF7R, it was difficult to see how much manpower it would take, but after completing Remake, we had a much better picture of how much manpower and what type of schedule it would require. That's why I thought that we might have been able to reach the ending even with the next installment. And Nomura says at the moment we do not plan to do more than a trilogy. However, since Remake only took place in Midgar, people might be worried that the remaining 2 installments will have too much content and we might have to omit something. Rest assured that we will not condense things, as each installment has a lot to offer. And again, this isn't like, people will read this and say, oh, that's it, they've confirmed that the story's going to say the same. No, they haven't. They've said that they're not abridging things. They're going to give everything plenty of room to breathe and flesh everything out, and they're going to get it done in 3 parts. But the fact that they even considered doing it in 2 parts tells me pretty solidly that we are looking at a different game. Like, there's no way that they could have done it. No way. Impossible. And the last question on this bit of the interview is just them pushing all the other things like Crisis Core, Ever Crisis, First Soldier, things like that. So nothing substantial. Nothing substantial, except for the very bottom bit where Kitase says that the basic part of Rebirth has been completed, and right now we're in the mass production phase. We're making great progress on the game, so please wait a bit longer. So, yeah, they're pretty confident that they're going to hit next Christmas, it looks like. And then finally we get to the last of the interviews that Audrey's translated for us all. Don't forget to go and give Audrey a follow over on Twitter. I'll put the link in the description below. But this interview is with Dengeki Online, and the interviewer starts with, since the current titles for FF7 are a remake reunion, including Crisis Core of course, and Rebirth, can we assume that the next title will also start with a re? Nomura kind of palms this off a little bit. So since I would like the FF7R project titles to all share the same hashtag or abbreviation with FF7R, I'm thinking that the third installment will also start with an R. They already know what that third installment is going to be called, I guarantee it. They already know. But anyway, moving on. The next question, I'm quite intrigued with the cutscene in FF7 Rebirth where we see Cloud and Sephiroth walking. And Nomura says that since the announcement trailer was only a teaser one, there wasn't much info in it. The next trailer will be the one that has info that will surely surprise you. Well, drop the trailer, man. Drop the trailer. Don't make us wait. Drop the trailer. Nomura's then asked about Rebirth seeming to have an open world, and he says that we'll explain that at the next info drop. And I've got a feeling that next info drop's going to be before the end of the year. Like, its 35th anniversary feels pretty good, because then you're a year away. I think we can be confident that we're going to get more info, actual info, this year. We get confirmation that the systems from FF7 Remake will be carrying over. Nomura says that the first FF7R is going to serve as the base, and Rebirth will roughly follow in its footsteps. They're obviously going to optimize things and tweak things a little bit to keep it fresh and keep it challenging for people who mastered Remake. So yeah, that makes complete sense. The interviewer then points out that they're a bit surprised that the next installment's coming so soon, only about 3 years after Remake. And Nomura says it's quite fast when you consider the time it took to move the game onto the PS5 and then to the PC version for Intergrade. And Kitase says that making Intergrade soon after Remake also had an impact. We were able to shift our resources to the PS5, and it allowed for a smoother development of Rebirth. Which is kind of what we were talking about when the intermission DLC was made and the Intergrade project happened. It was clearly them testing the PS5 and getting a feel for it, so that when they jump fully into Rebirth, they're not doing it from zero. You know, they've already got a bit of a base on the PS5 and working in that architecture. So yeah, that makes complete sense. Nomura says that the models probably won't change. However, after we made some alterations to Yuffie's model for Intergrade, some characters did receive adjustments too. I'm going to guess that's to facilitate animations and things like that, but we'll see. The interviewer then says that there are many people who hope to see Red 13 as a playable character in Rebirth, and Nomura says please look forward to it, so pretty much confirmation that we're going to get Red 13 as a controllable character. I still don't know how that's going to work, if I'm being completely honest with you, but I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be interesting to find out. It's going to be fun, getting to run around in combat. Yeah, I'm up for that. And then what seems to be the final question is, what exactly will Rebirth cover when compared to the original game? And Kitase says, while I can't reveal a clear picture for you, there will not be any lack of major events that appear in the original game. However, the locations that appear in the original game might not be present in the same order. The chronology of how locations appear might be shuffled. In other words, even though the order of locations has changed, that doesn't mean the location itself is omitted, so please do not worry about that. So there we have it again, confirmation that the order of locations is going to change, and therefore the story is probably going to change quite substantially just from that comment itself. I mean, you know me, I'm pretty confident this is a completely different story. Like, they're going to keep dangling the carrot for as long as they can. But yeah, it's a completely different story in my opinion. It'll look the same, it'll smell the same, it'll sound the same as Final Fantasy VII, but it won't be. That's kind of where I'm at. So there you go, that's all of the pertinent information from these interviews that have kind of been put out. This is a much longer video than I expected to be. I was planning to look at another translation as well and kind of compare the two. Turquoise Hammer from Shinra Archaeology Department, they've done a translation too. I will also link them in the description as well as Audrey, just so that you can go and check out both translations. You know, they're very similar, but there's little nuances that are different, but on the whole, pretty much the same thing. And yeah, a lot to think about. A lot of things that I was pretty confident on already. Things are going to change. The order of locations is going to change. I'm a bit wary of them saying, oh no, that's the flashback in that mountain scene, but they've said it, so I have no reason not to believe them at the minute. The gut feeling will continue though. But what do you think about that interview? What's your takeaway from the interviews? It's very much things are going to stay the same, but not the same. That's what I feel like they're trying to say to us. Like, things are going to stay the same, but they're not going to be the same. So yeah, that's what I've taken from these interviews. And also, we're probably going to get more information before the end of the year, and the next trailer is going to blow people's minds off, it would look like. Like, from what Nomura and Kitase have been saying there, when we get more information in another trailer, people's heads are going to kind of be like, oh, what's going on? And they keep talking about this mystery, and the mystery of Zack. What's the deal with Zack? What's the deal with Sephiroth? What's Sephiroth been doing? You answer those mysteries, you answer most of the other questions that you've got, like, is it two timelines? Is it an alternate reality? Is it this? Is it that? If you figure out those two things, really, what Sephiroth's up to and what's gone on with Zack, you figure both of them out, you're going to have a good idea what's going on. So we'll work on that. But, like I say, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know what you thought about these interviews. And yeah, keep an eye out for more, because there's going to be a lot more stuff coming. I can feel it. Don't forget, like and sub, but more importantly than anything, have a great day.